Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the December 2nd, 2019 Port Authority Board meeting. First order of business is minutes, correction for approval as written of our last meeting. Looking for a motion.
Make a motion we approve the minutes from last meeting.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as published. Any questions? Hearing none, take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll approve the minutes as written. We'll take a little bit of a sidelight here for a second, and not for a second, for a few minutes, and have Mr. Haynes, I believe he's got something to tell us about insurance for the year. John?
Yes, I contacted Charlie Keene at General Insurance, and he's here tonight to give the presentation. Charlie, you ready?
Charlie, welcome aboard.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, board and administration. I'm Charlie Keene with General Insurance Services. Probably all know me anyways. This year, I'm here to present the insurance renewal for the Michigan City Port Authority. The renewal starts on January 1st, 2020. And I have a renewal presentation to briefly go over with everybody. As I run through this presentation, if you would please stop me and ask me any questions, or if I'm moving too fast, slow me down. We'll keep it pretty informal. So without further ado, I'm going to have you move to page number 3.
We saw pieces of it. We saw pieces of it.
We're page number 3 outlines the named insureds and the location schedule, which there has been none. Just a very brief background. I've reviewed this with the administration of the Michigan City Port Authority as well prior to this meeting, so everything should be in order, but if you see anything, please let me know. Page number 4 is the commercial property section. So this covers all your stuff. So buildings, business, personal property. The boats will be covered in a different section under the marina section. So I have outlined any changes in red. So middle column is the expiring, right-hand column is the renewal, with any changes outlined in red. So buildings and business personal property is a blanket limit of $3.722 million, which, if you do the math, is exactly 2% of last year's number. So we increase it 2% to keep up with inflation and the cost to rebuild and to replace your stuff.
Most of those are just nominal increases all the way down.
Correct. Yeah. So it, even though we blanket the coverage, I like to outline each individual coverage item. Which also, if you do the calculation of the math, comes out to 2%. But we've increased it 2%. Pretty traditionally what we've done in the past. Without doing a formal appraisal, it's kind of a good way to keep up with just increased cost of construction. So if there aren't any questions there, we'll turn to the next page, page number 5, the marina coverages. So we have marina operators legal liability coverage of $1 million. That covers your liability for somebody else's property or boats in your care, custody, and control. The bumper chute or the excess coverage also covers over and above that limit as well. Machinery and equipment is coverage for your machinery and equipment, which foots the schedule in the center of the page, $495,808. We have a blanket unscheduled equipment limit of $25,000. We have protection and indemnity coverage, which is the same thing as auto liability in your car. This would be liability for the arising out of the operations of your vessels or boats. We have $1 million of coverage for that. And then own boat schedule, what's pushed to the schedule at the bottom of the page, $130,239. So we have the barge, the 26 by 8 foot barge. We have a 16-foot Carolina skiff. We have a 2007 Honda motor. And we have the new barge, the 12 by 30 foot barge. If there aren't any questions, we'll move to page number 6, commercial crime coverage. We have employee dishonesty coverage of $100,000. So if an employee steals money or stuff, the Port Authority is protected up to $100,000. Money and theft of money and securities, whether on premises or while being taken to the bank for a deposit, we have $10,000. Forgery and alteration, we have $30,000 if somebody forges a check and it gets taken out of your account. And computer and funds transfer fraud at $10,000. Somebody steals money via computer. Page number 7, commercial general liability coverages. So this is bodily injury to a third party. So if someone comes on the premises, or one of the slip owners, they slip and fall on the premises somewhere, whether it's on a slip or out on the sidewalk or down at Trail Creek Marina or over at the park. We have a $1 million each occurrence with a $2 million general aggregate. And the bumper chute covers up over and above that, which is your excess liability again, which we'll get to momentarily. We have sudden and accidental pollution coverage at $300,000. And then the premium for this comes from the exposure schedule listed below. Very slight change in the exposure over the prior year, slight increase. Moving on to page 8, business auto coverage. We have primary auto liability coverage of $1 million, uninsured, underinsured motorists both at $1 million. The bumper chute covers over and above those limits as well. We have full coverage on all the vehicles except for the 1989 double axle trailer, as noted in the vehicle schedule below. And just a quick note on the driver's schedule. The policy provides coverage for any permissible driver. We list the schedule for the regular drivers.
Okay.
If there's anybody that drives that's not on the schedule, there is coverage. And we do change those with seasonal help and things like that.
Okay.
So that list is not all inclusive. Moving on to page 9, workers' compensation coverage. We have coverage that's statutory in the state of Indiana. So whatever the state of Indiana says we need to pay for an injured employee is what the policy provides. We have employer's liability if an employee was to sue you for an injury they sustained, $1 million, and the bumper chute covers over.
Gee, I wonder why the bump light went up, huh?
And the experience modification dropped slightly, which is a good thing, although it is still considered very high. Of course, that's due to the explosion.
How many years does that, does it reduce every year by a certain percentage? What is the
No,
percentage?
it's made up of 3 years of claimed history, not including this most current year. So this will drop off next year.
Okay,
Next year at this time,
That was
we'll be
my
talking
question.
about, we should see a major decrease.
okay, thank you.
Should nothing happen between now and the end of the year.
Somebody knocked on the door.
That's what
Oh,
I did.
oh,
I'm not on the wood. So. We made a slight clerical increase in payroll, and the rates have changed slightly. A little higher on the marina and driver's classification, a little lower on the clerical classification. And then, of course, we also have the federal statute if somebody was to try to make a claim under the Longshoremen and Harbor Worker Act, which is Federal Workers' Compensation Act. We don't believe that we apply or that we're held to that standard, but in case they do, we have coverage for that. Any questions on the workers' comp? Moving on to page 10, the bumper shooter, otherwise known as an umbrella policy. We have an additional $4 million over and above all of the primary liability policies that we just reviewed. Bumper shoot is just a term that they use in the marina world for umbrella policy.
Charlie,
Yes,
where's your board member liability?
we're getting to that. We do have board management liability or public officials liability. The bumper shoot does not cover over and above those lines of coverage.
Okay.
Okay. So moving on to the next page, number 11, public officials liability. Mr. Johns, to your point, so this is your board members' liability for decisions made as directors or officers. We have $1 million of coverage. We have employment practices liability coverage for hiring, firing, discrimination, things of that nature at $1 million. Any questions on that line of coverage?
Is that a 3-year term?
It is a 3-year term. So this will be the second of 3 years. So essentially what that does is lock in your rate for 3 years. So it's a positive. You can cancel it at any time if you want to, but it does lock in the rate for 3 years. So it's a nice feature. Moving on to page 12. First section is the storage tank pollution liability. So this would be any liability that would arise out of the fuel storage tanks. We have one 4,000 gallon tank and one 8,000 gallon tank. We have $1 million of coverage for any one incident, and then the aggregate or all pollution incidences is $1 million.
Charlie,
Yes, sir.
do we have any protection in a situation where, for example, one of our slipholders would have a major fuel spill? Do we have any insurance coverage on that?
Yeah. So your general liability has $300,000 built into sudden and accidental. Of course, the insurance company would go after them to try to recover the money.
Okay.
Yes. And then the next section is the cyber coverage. So this would be coverage for any type of network or social engineering fraud or anything where somebody would try to break into your system or extort you for something. We believe that everything's pretty locked down, but as you know, this is very publicized and things happen even to the biggest companies. So obviously it causes a concern because we've had some local things happen that are of concern. So they're out there and they're trying to break into governmental entities and things of that nature. So that's a great policy to have, and we have $1 million of coverage for that.
Charlie, regarding cyber protection.
Yes.
Now, is there any protection at all for our customers? In other words, they use their credit card with us to do business, and their information is picked up inappropriately and illegally. Is there anything in here that covers us on that?
Great question. So there's two elements. So the short answer is yes. that would be a third-party liability coverage. So that would be theft of somebody's information that you're in control of. So it could also be employee records or any protectable information that you guys are held to any red flag laws or anything of that nature.
Okay.
So yes. So the $1 million liability would cover those third-party liability issues. Mainly what you're buying for in a credit card situation is coverage to try to figure out what happened and to monitor credit and things of that nature. And to pay for anything that their credit card companies wouldn't reimburse them for.
Okay.
Great question. So that'd be third party, and then first party would be damage to your stuff or extortion or anything of that nature, where they come in and they hack into your computer or something of that nature. If there aren't any questions, moving on to page 13, premium summary. So without diving into each line of coverage, I'm just jumping to the total. So expiring premium $77,469, renewal premium $79,238. That represents 2.6% increase, most of which is exposure increases. So we increase property coverage 2%.
Okay.
And the workers' comp accounts for the majority of that other part, and that's just due to loss history. Very modest increase on that. I was pretty pleased as to Hanover's renewal terms on that line of coverage. And then offer terrorism coverage. So traditionally, the board has decided to exclude terrorism coverage. It's an additional $445. I highly recommend that you take that coverage.
John, any comments on that? On the coverage with terrorism?
We've never had it in the past. I don't remember what the conversations we had in the past, why we
We've
didn't.
always rejected it in the past, John, for the last several years.
Yes.
10 years or more.
Yeah, I remember.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I don't remember what the reason was why we rejected it forever.
It's been a lot. We've never had it.
Right.
I remember conversations about it too. And I would still be in favor of declining it.
Yes.
Being in favor of what, Dan?
Declining?
I would, that'd be my thought at this point, unless there's some evidence besides Mr. Keene suggesting we take it, but unless there's something else, I would think we should decline it again. But I'm open to any comments.
I don't believe we need it either.
Okay, let's move on.
And then the next page, the next two pages, I won't go in detail, but these are the property enhancements of the bells and whistles of the policy. They throw in a lot of additional nice coverages. They've increased some limits over last year, so that's good.
Okay.
So I won't go into detail on that. And I will, one other note on the premium side of it. For being a member of the Michigan Industry Boaters Association, there's a 5% credit built into the policy.
That's right, I remember that. That's about our third year on that, as I remember.
Yeah, it's been a while.
That's good.
So I went through that pretty quickly. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Ford, anything? Not hearing anything. John?
I make a motion we accept this as presented to us, minus the terrorist coverage.
Have a motion to accept Mr. Keen's presentation and in the amount of $79,538 for our insurance for next year. Looking for a second?
I second.
We have a second? Any questions? Any questions? Further questions on this? Hearing none, take a vote. All those in favor of accepting the insurance package as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Charlie, thank you.
Thanks, Board.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. If there's any questions, you can relay them to Tim or Marianne or call me
Will do.
directly.
I guess, now that we're all done, I should have acted earlier, just a minor question. If you know of anything else that you think besides the terrorism thing, which we've covered, we talked, if you know of anything else that you think we should be considering, please bring it to our attention.
Yeah, I usually, because you guys have pretty much,
Smart.
yeah, you guys are very intelligent. Because we've recommended things over the years and you have pretty much closed all the gaps, so I
Okay.
have no other recommendations.
Gotcha.
Or there would be another page after that premium summary of recommendations if I had any.
Yeah.
So, the only other thing would be if you want to increase limits on any of that, if you feel that $5 million of coverage isn't enough on the liability, I believe you're protected under some statutory tort caps and things of that nature. So I think it's adequate.
Okay.
But, you never know. If you have something go to the federal level, those aren't protected by Indiana statute.
You don't want to scare us here.
Okay. So, Joe could probably get into that in a lot more detail than I can. So,
All right. Well, we thank you again.
thanks a
Appreciate
lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Where's my paperwork go?
I just want to make sure. Thank you. Thank you. Weeknights. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, John, putting that together. I know that got delayed a couple of weeks because of the weather, and one of our meetings got called off. Getting back onto our agenda, comments from the public. We have 3 members of the public with us today. I'm not sure if they're here to talk about the exact same subject. I see a nod, yes, so,
At least
okay.
I know of that for
Okay, that's good.
One of our
If
situations.
whoever wants to speak first, if you would please stand, just state your name and tell us what you're here for.
All right. Hello, folks. My name is Larry Brown, and I have been associated with the Port Authority for a long time. I've also been a slip owner or slip holder since my father passed away. We've had the same slip since about 1980 or whenever the slips changed over to the new design, which is
Sure.
our slip is 554, and we've considered it home for all these years, and it's been good for us.
Good.
The 3 of us at the moment are sailboaters. Vitas Cathunius also is a slip holder on the 300 dock. But our concern, from the boating public is this. We have $200 already invested in, holding our slips for the 2020 season. We are about to be hit with a second billing that will be coming up sometime early in January, and there'll be the third billing, which will be the last half of the major portion of our slips fees for the year 2020. We're concerned with let's say the elevation of the lake, which is a concern of many of the port authorities all around the lakes, and the marinas are all facing the same thing. But we as boat owners have our boats high and dry at the moment. Should there be no place for us to place our boats, like in the 2020 season in, the Michigan City Harbor, we are soon to be well invested again in, the Michigan City Port Authority. So, speaking for myself and probably for many others that aren't here that haven't maybe thought about this yet, is what happens to our fees that we would be like putting into the Port Authority by the end of the season. Let's say if come February there's no electricity through the finger piers, through the main piers, which may or may not cost the facility to shut down, similar to what happened maybe to New Buffalo, some of the other places. And that's my question. I think I can speak for my wife and also one of my good friends, also about concerned about, and we also represent, I guess, in a way, the Michigan City Yacht Club too, because we're all members of that group.
Okay.
And we can pass the word pretty quickly to our fellow members on what your thoughts are on that, because with the valuation of the slips going into 2020, it soon it gets rather it does get exciting to be part of the group here, but at same money could be maybe used to hold our boats high and dry for a season if there's no place to put them, or else by chance if we do have to put them in the water, we're going to be going from port to port just because there's no place to hold us, kind of like the Flying Dutchman's.
Right.
And that might be something for us to know about as well.
Understand. I'd be most happy to do a quick address your question, and then I'd like to let the harbor master talk. Mary Ann, if she wants, and I'd just like to open up a little bit of discussion with the board. First of all, we all watch the cycling of the lake levels. And we all know it's higher in the summer and it's supposed to go lower in the winter. Well, the last couple of months, we've noticed it really hadn't gone down too much in the winter. Consequently, because of that, we're as concerned as you are. Have we made a policy? No, we haven't yet, because it hadn't been a concern to really do that to that degree, just because the lake has been scheduled to go back down. I don't think any of us believe it's going to go down an awfully lot, but for a while anyway. Without being super specific, I said, we're in the business of pleasing the voters. We're here for you guys. That's what we're here for. And I'm sure that whatever policy we come up with will be fair and equitable. Do we have one? No. Have we been thinking about it? I tell you, the last month, Tim and I and Mary Ann have had discussions on this, just the three of us just talking about it, and don't have a positive, real direction yet. Okay, enough being said from me on that. I'd like to open it up pretty quickly to Tim if you have any comments to bring on that.
Well, I would just say we share your concern. Looking at the Corps of Engineers, I can tell you what their forecast is, and so far they haven't been correct. So I'm not sure how much good that really is. Currently, everything's functional, but what it's going to do in April, I don't know. So I think the board is pretty much open to deal with whatever as it comes up. So I would think just in historical, what we've done in the past, if for some reason, let's say you winter with us as well as summer, and for some reason you can't use your boat in the slip, we would apply that to summer storage if there's a summer storage fee or whatever. Generally, we do a rebate right up until the season opens, and then after that we prorate it. So it would probably end up being something similar to that. Can't speak for what the board decides to do, but historically that's kind of what we've done. But you're exactly right to be worried about the water level.
Mary Ann, do you have anything? Could you just follow what Tim said? I'm going to open it up to the board for discussion, but I really want to get back to answering the question and not belaboring the issue. Mr. Manner, please.
As we're redecking out there, we're redecking piers and so forth out there. we have been looking at and talking about maybe changing some of the electrical system the way it is out there to try to prevent that. That's one of the things that we've discussed and we're talking about. So,
It seems to me like that is probably the most pressing concern, because we know the water level is probably going to get close to the finger pier and the main pier heights.
mm-hmm.
I mean, it does that, and that doesn't really frighten us. I mean, last year it did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's when it goes like up and over. I mean, there might be a possibility where, the boaters would, take a weekend off or something like that. I mean, I don't think that's the main concern. I think it would be like to have that, the potential shocking, which is not something that you folks want to know. And, I know your insurance man doesn't want to have that happen either. $1 million would go in a hurry. But, no, but we are concerned. I mean, it's just, we want to have our boats in the water. There's one on your board there probably saying the same thing.
You have every right to be concerned, and we are concerned also.
We've considered doing different structural changes of some sort, temporary, permanent. But we're not sure what to do on that yet. We've got our marine engineers keeping an eye on that. We've asked them to get involved, but quite frankly, they're as deeply involved in other marinas doing the same thing. And there are not enough marine engineers around to take care of this pressing concern.
And there again, in a year or two, this level may be, back down to more of an average of what we've had. So, I mean, you really can't build for, 20 feet in the air at the moment. When next year you're going to wish you had it down a little further, more normal, or the year after. So, we kind of understand that, but we're also concerned about, where our fees will be going.
Sure.
So,
let's, Sam, I'm going to get to you in a second. You just had your hand on. Let's make sure we're addressing your fee question, because I think.
I think you have.
Well, no, I want to know, okay, if we pay in January, what happens to our money? I mean, if we can't put our boat in the spring, I mean, we can't store our boat here.
Okay.
In Michigan, most sailboaters can't.
Okay. I'm going to ask them.
So there's no rebate on that.
I understand. I thought Tim gave you a pretty good idea of where we stood on that, but I'll ask again, Tim and Mary Ann. I said, what's the policy for refunds at this point in time?
Our current policy for refunds is if it's before the start of the season, you get it all back minus the $200 deposit. So before April 1st, you'd get everything back minus $200, the way it stands right now. After April 1st, since the season technically starts April 1st, we'd start prorating it. And normally when we hit June, July, end of May, that's when normally we would stop doing refunds at that point.
Okay. Our concern is, we understand your concerns, and we're trying to take care of those, and we will in an equitable sense, however that is. Our concern is also, if the water level keeps coming up and stays up, and we flood 4, 5, and 6, there's a real concern for everybody. I mean, that's a lack of revenue for us. A couple hundred boaters put out of order. That's not good. Do we have a policy of what's going to happen on that? No, not yet, but we're slowly working through it. This has all come up for us, I believe, in the last couple of months, just because we've been told the level is going to go down and then it would stay down coming into next year. And you're right. We don't see that happening right now. Do we have an answer? No, we don't. Mr. Johns had his hand up a second ago.
Well, yeah, we're not going to be able to solve this situation tonight with this group. What I think would be a good approach for you to take, Sam, is that the staff and the attorney ought to sit down and work out a policy that we hope we never have to use.
Yep.
And want to make sure that the attorney is involved so that we can make sure that we're protecting the slip holders as well as we are the marina. It shouldn't be that difficult to do. That's a whole different situation than engineering problems and physical modification and that sort of thing. That's a whole different situation. The situation we need to work with right now is how do we protect these folks and us both in the event that nature goes wild again. We need to have a policy in place, and the slip holders need to know what it is.
It's almost too bad that your insurance man isn't still here, because he might be able to come up with a policy that would say if there is no season, that would protect you also. That might be one of those additional charges that,
That's a good point.
you know, that I wish Charlie was still here.
Well, let's
So,
make note of that.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak? Danny?
Yeah,
Mr. Messina.
And I've got the same concern being a boat owner here on the 400 dock. It seems like the only ones that's not concerned about the high water are the fish. And of course, you hear the fishermen, and going to every port along the harbor or lake this year, they've had the problems already. They've had high waters. I think we've taken in boats from other harbors because we haven't had that high water. I don't know what they've done. I guess it's really not our concern. What other ports have done to their customers.
I'm not aware. I just know they all have the same concern we do, and the thoughts on fixing it are the same concerns that we have.
Okay. And it is. The swallows this year, they couldn't nest underneath our pier. I mean, if they could talk, they'd be giving us tech too. You know, they have no place to go to build their nest. So we know it's a problem, the situation. And
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible that the appropriate people do their homework and be prepared with a proposal for the board to consider at the next board meeting? You know, this situation needs to be solved soon for the same reasons these folks are here. Okay. So I would hope that we're capable of making the kind of proposal we ought to make in the next 2 weeks and have it ready to present to the board at that time.
Sounds like a good idea. Let's go ahead and do that. I don't think we need a motion or approval to do that. That's just part of good business sense. Mr. Frame, why don't you and Mary Ann get together with our attorney, set up a date, we can have a little discussion, give me a call, and we'll set some people up additionally to be involved in that forthwith.
probably Mr. Haynes should be included in that since he's our insurance man.
John, if you want to be there,
Yes.
you'll be there.
Yes.
Okay, I'll be there. We can have one other board member then.
If you're going to have that many board members, you need to advertise it.
No, we can have three there.
Yeah.
John and I are right now, and that's it. If someone else wants to be there to get together, let me know. All right. So be it. Thank you, everyone. You're welcome to stay as long as you want. We're going to go. We'll probably have another 40 minutes of a board meeting here. Okay. You got notes on that? All right, thank you. Report from the harbor master. Mr. Frame?
All right, Larson Danielson continues to work on the 200 dock. They are almost 1/4 of the way finished with the 200 dock. They've been making pretty good progress here lately. The 800 dock went out for bid last week. That's for the electrical upgrades on the 800 dock, and those bids are due at our next meeting on December 16th. And then finally, the Christmas lights are all set up, and they all get turned on Saturday, December 7th at about 4:30. And that's all I have for now, unless anybody has any questions.
John?
What was the? I just don't remember. I know we were going to do something with the electrical on the 800 dock. Was it the new boxes? Is that what the bid was for?
Right. Yep. They're replacing the power outlet boxes on the front half of the 800. And then we're replacing the breaker panels that are on the outer half of the 800, because the 800 has two different systems. It was built at two different times. So the front half, it's replacing those Charles Industry boxes, just direct replacement. The outer half, there are already 4 big breaker panels. Those will get replaced with stuff that contains GFI protection and all of that.
Okay. And just for a little information for everybody, the docks that are underwater, the 800 dock is higher than the rest of the docks.
Right.
7 and 8 are fine.
1, 2, 3, 7, and 8 are all at the same elevation. And 4, 5, and 6, for whatever reason, are 8 inches lower than everything else. So if we run into electrical problems related to the water level, we'll see it on 4, 5, and 6 first. So far, it's not been a problem. I've had the electrician look at it a couple different times, and he can't find anything going wrong. But that's not to say something couldn't,
Right.
you know. But yeah.
Okay.
Once the 800 dock, John, is taken care of, the idea here, as we talked about over the last 8 months or so, is to do the 700 dock, and then the rest of them to get the electrical upgrades necessary for the ESD that
Right.
we put in a few years ago,
Yeah.
thanks to Bruce. And then as we approach the 4, 5, and 6 and the water problem there, we'll have good electric technology to what to put in there eventually when that situation gets taken care of. So it's the 800 dock is kind of the primer. Anyone else have questions? Danny?
Yeah, did the roofs get all completed on the gazebos?
Yep.
Yeah, we get to pay for them, didn't I?
Yeah, we paid for them, but they had to stop last week or 2 weeks ago for weather related.
They were back the next day and finished it.
Okay. I'm sure they'll look nice and the boaters will appreciate them.
Anyone else? Lost my schedule. Thank you. Ms. Palicki?
We don't have anything special going on in the office right now, just taking care of the customers and answering the phones, and we're still getting calls of people looking for slips.
Good.
That are unhappy with the marinas they're in.
Anything for Mrs. Palicki?
Yeah, on the subject of new slip holders and next season, as I recall, having examined slip fees in the competitive marinas to us, that we were below most of them and most slip sizes, with the exception of just a couple small areas. Do you have any idea what the other marinas are doing about slip fees for 2020?
The ones that we did compare ours with other marinas, and they were about the same and close. The only thing that I really saw that was more money was the overnight rental. The slips were about $5 higher than what ours are.
Okay.
But otherwise, we're right there with them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Garrett, budget, financial oversight, review, and approve bills to be paid.
All right, I'm just going to touch on a couple items that are on our docket. If you look at the 5th item down for J&B excavating, that's an error from previously, and you'll notice the next item down from it, we have the right J&B. So that's just, as it says, incorrect vendor on invoices, and it's voided. That's just showing that that's been voided out. So just wanted to let you guys see that. If you look at, so there's the 2 items there, so it's like the 5th. For the $3,095, so you're just flipping, that's why there's 2. If you look at the item above that for Edgewater Resources for $2,581.25, that is for the survey was
What is it?
Bathymetric survey.
the bathymetric survey. Okay. And then if you look at the item down from there for the J and B, there's also one as a final item. If you put those two items together, they're about $4,500 of this. And then the next item down for $3,625. This is a deposit on flooring for the lobby and the office to replace what's there. That's starting to come up and with something with a more vinyl that's waterproof. As we were talking about earlier, there's been some water that's gotten in recently, and we want to make sure that our flooring doesn't become an issue.
Okay.
And then the final item, which is under the capital projects or capital improvements, is for Edgewater, and that's for the 200 dock and the electrical bedding for that $6,048.46. If you add those 1, 2, 3, 4 items up, 16,000 of the 23 combined, which leaves 9 checks to cover the other 6,000. So, if there are no questions, I make a motion to pay our bills as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions on the bills? Any questions? Take a vote. All those in favor of accepting the bills as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good, we pay the bills.
And then the second item I had is I had Mary Ann send out to all the board members last week just some information on budgeting for next year. And after looking at a couple of things, realized the original raise that we considered for salaries for just the salaried employees. We originally were talking about a 3%, and I gave you an explanation on why I thought it should move to 4%. I didn't hear any questions that were raised on it, unless there's some now. I wanted to make a motion that we would adjust that increase from 3% to 4% for our salaried employees.
That's for 3 people, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay, well, I'm sure there'll be some questions, but since you did bring the motion up, I will look for a second here. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Oh, we have a second. Okay, questions concerning this?
Sorry.
Could you give us just a couple of minutes, maybe a minute of background, additional background on why you're wanting to do this?
So when looking at it, and this year we did something a little bit different than we normally do. It's just normally, X amount of percent raise across the board, depending on where you are, whether you're salaried, whether you're hourly, seasonal, year round, didn't matter. This year we decided to go a little bit different with it because sometimes we've had discussions about, sometimes they raise for someone that's 2% or 3%, whatever it might be that year, for someone who makes $10 an hour is not the same for somebody who makes $18 an hour. And it's just made more sense to go about it in a way that for those employees that we're only seeing, 3 or 20 cents at max raise or 10 cents at max raise, that there's a little bit more. And in some cases, some of those employees didn't receive raises prior to this. Well, doing the math afterwards, and I thought it was exactly what we wanted it to be, we noticed that in some cases, you actually are seeing some employees making more money than others based on that 75% versus the 3% we originally did. So that was why the shift to 4.
Okay, I appreciate that, that additional explanation. Any other questions before we take a vote? Sure, Dan.
Yeah, I read the thing thoroughly too, and some comments. Seems like kind of a strange request. I was curious who made it, and I don't need an answer. It says this was different than other methods used in the past. I don't know what the past ones were. Didn't think we had anything in stone on how we gave our increases. The last few years, and I was the one that brought up this year that I thought our salaried and hourly employees needed an increase because they haven't had any for a couple of years. I haven't seen them come last year, the previous year, and say, hey, all the salary employees got 2%, 3%, we got nothing. And now we're just turning the shoe around the other way and saying they're getting more at 75 cents than I am at a 3% increase. I'm not for it.
What are you for?
As I always have been, a merit increase. I'm always for a merit increase. But because I did bring up that the hourly employees did deserve an increase this year, I did vote in favor of the way we put it in, the way we vote on it. I'm not sure how we can, somehow it's got to be rescinded. I think that line item has to be rescinded.
I don't want to go that direction. I really don't. I've stayed out of this whole thing.
Mhm.
I really have from the start. This has been Aaron's and the staff. He presented the 3% and the 75 cents. We went forward. We had a good discussion on it, and we approved it. All right, that's done. Mm-hmm. Yes, John, we approved it. We approved all of that. Now he has found with the staff that there apparently is what they are calling a discrepancy. I asked him to present a resolution for that. Aaron's presented the resolution of another 1% for the 3 staff, just to have them at least, I believe what you say, at least have the ability to make a little more than some of the other people.
To just give you an idea of it, it's not that they would be making, well, the employees that we gave a raise to are getting a significant raise over previous years. The difference would be not that. It's not that now they've never made the same amount of money as employees that are here 7 days a week. They're on hourly. But the difference would be is that if you were working 7 days a week as Tim, Mary Ann, Dan work, they make the same thing no matter what. Whereas if you were working and making an hourly wage with overtime, you could make more than they do. That was my thought behind it.
Okay. Rather just repeating a bunch of stuff over and over, I'm presuming that your concern, your question has been addressed, and I'd like to look for more questions from the board so we can move on here, one way or another. Any other questions on this motion from the board?
Now, as I understand it, the 3 employees that would be involved with a 1% increase are all exempt employees who do not get paid overtime.
Correct.
And they're all working overtime.
Correct.
Right. And the cost, you had it in your notes, something under $2,000?
Yeah, it was like $1,700. And it's already in the budget. Like, we always account for just in cases.
Bruce. Sorry.
Just a comment about it. I know in most businesses and industries, your supervisors who are not hourly people are generally paid more than your hourly employees are. I know that was true in the steel industry. I think it's probably the same in most businesses and most industries. And the situation we're in right now, we have 3 employees that are supervisors, and they're not hourly employees, and they'll be making less money than the hourly people. And I think that's wrong. That's why I second your motion.
Okay. Not hearing any other comments, and I think there's maybe some, if we go voice vote on this, I'm afraid we might not hear what's going on. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this issue. Mrs. Pilecki, we've got a motion and a second, so we're ready to take a vote. Mrs. Pilecki.
Mr. Manor?
Yes. Aye.
Mrs. Meir?
Aye.
Mr. Johns?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Mr. Haynes?
Aye.
Mr. Messina?
Nay.
So, 5-1?
5-1.
5-1. Motion passes. Just a comment. Next year, let's do our due diligence a little more thoroughly next year so we don't have this. Thank you all. Mr. Garrett, do you have anything else?
That is all.
Thank you for your time and effort in this. Claims and insurance, Mr. Haynes.
Charlie took care of the report. I will get a hold of him about a meeting, or Mary Ann can, if we get together and have a meeting.
On what?
On a water issue, seeing if
Because that was a side issue from what we talked about on this other get-together.
no, same one. He might want to be involved because if we
Okay.
have to possibly refunding money to the slip holders.
And
Are we covered somewhere? Yeah.
Yeah. Is there insurance that covers
Lost revenue.
lost revenue?
just a suggestion. It's your committee, but you might just call them and talk to them and say, "Hey, do you want to come to this? This is we're going to be looking at this from a liability standpoint. Is there a reason that you could offer something? If he wants to come, sure, but might give him the opportunity there
Yes.
because I think that no, that's good. The harbor master's got this in place. Get with John and Joe, we'll take care of it. Anything else? We want to get this done before, so we can present it at the next meeting. Port operations, personnel, marina policy, myself. Other than the meetings we're just discussing, I think that's all we can think of to offer at this point in time. We've got enough on our plates. Anybody have any questions for me? Okay, Danny, if we call this an operational meeting, you're on the operational committee, if you're interested. So why don't you put him down also as to be contacted when we get together with this. Please. Mr. Messina, Board of Communication Special Events.
Kind of already asked about the gazebos. I know we talked about that, and I'll let some of the personnel or voters that asked me about them, and I'll let them know that we did take care of that. Some of our own board members here, and even a staff member had asked me if we were going to have a possible Christmas party or a dinner or something, a get-together, and it's something I've got on my list to maybe sit down with Mrs. Pilecki to talk about, see if we have funds available and if we can get that started again. That's good what I have.
Doesn't matter to me. We just discontinued that a couple of years ago after no one really showed up for a couple of years, I thought. I never got involved in that. I never got involved in the planning. It was not really attended to heavily. Sir?
As I recall, the thing that sort of diminished the Christmas party was that almost all the people who were invited to the Christmas party were on vacation at that time.
I don't remember. I just remember there weren't many people
so
there.
that was the reason. It wasn't that it wasn't appreciated or wasn't good. The people were all on vacation. So we ended up with a couple, 3 staff members.
Yeah. Danny?
Yeah, my thought would probably be after the holidays are over. People are back to work into February even.
Why don't you
I will check with
the
Mrs. Pilecki.
Pilecki and see what you can do.
Okay. That's all I have.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I just we haven't had it for a couple of years, so I didn't really think much of it. Mr. Manor, Master Planning, Special Projects, Park Liaison.
I have nothing for special projects or master planning, but I do have a few things from the park board meeting that I attended. Talking about the parking stickers, they set their prices for that, and of course, Michigan City residents are free to get into the park. LaPorte County residents, it costs $25 for a pass, and if you're out of LaPorte County, it costs $40 for a pass. So those are the fees that everybody should be aware of if they have friends that want to have stickers and stuff, those are the fees that they would have to pay. Phil Latchford, who is the president of the park board, he publicly thanked the Port Authority for their financial help in kicking off the planning at the Millennium Plaza. So he made a public comment about thank you to the Port Authority, and I wanted to pass that on to everybody from the Port Authority. Surfscape has actually recently planted many different types of bulbs in that area there, and they expect them to pop in the springtime. So they won't be planting bulbs in the spring, of course. They plant them in the wintertime. So they've already put a lot of plantings in over there. So those are the only things I had from the park board meeting.
Hey, anyone have anything for Mr. Manor? Any questions at all? Moving on. Mrs. Meir, advertising, public relations?
I have nothing to report, but I would like to make a suggestion for the, the operational committee regarding the water levels and possibility of refunds during the season as they enter in. Whatever your committee decides, what that policy is, I would suggest that it's on the website for the, so that they're not calling constantly or coming into the meeting trying to figure it out, that it's posted on the website once it's all determined. That's it.
That's a good idea. I think Mrs. Palicki wrote that note to herself. Anything for Mrs. Meir? Yes, sir.
I think it's under Mrs. Mears, but a few meetings ago, I think we talked about becoming a member. Did we want to or not become a member of the Chamber of Commerce? I don't know if that's under advertising committee or if that's a board decision.
Yeah, it's the board's.
And it's they probably want to know by the first of the year when they have their publication come out. My opinion is we do not become a member.
I agree with Dan.
I'm sorry, Sam, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No,
I agree with Dan. In the beginning, we joined the
chamber.
We joined that thing so that we could be more involved in both understanding and also contributing some input on how the chamber was operating on those things that applied to the lakefront and the marina. Well, as it worked out, we didn't attend the meetings, and I think the most activity we've had with the Chamber of Commerce since we joined was to send a check each month. So I don't see that if we're not going to have a staff member at that meeting, at those meetings, and they don't have time for that with all the other meetings that they're attending, I think we ought to not renew this year.
If I could raise a point for the board to consider and remember, I'm sure that activity will increase regarding the master plan for the lakefront, and to keep that in mind as to the possibility of more activities occurring and the possibility of the chamber becoming more active with the Port Authority and the Park Department. So to keep that in mind.
Are we currently a member?
Till the end of the year.
right.
Okay. And
So
what's the fee?
$350
A year?
a year.
Well, I don't see a lot of nods to renew, but if somebody wants to make it official, go ahead. Otherwise, we're going to move on.
What do you mean make it official? Are you going to have a board vote on this or what?
Do you want us to renew?
I'm not in favor of it.
Well, I hear 3 people that are not in favor, so, and I can't vote.
Mike, I just have a question. Is this a board thing, or is this fall under advertisement and public relations? I don't know.
It could be part.
Yeah, I don't.
That.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we don't normally vote on what their budget's used for to advertise. Just just a guess. I don't know.
I think that's a good point.
Seems micromanaging.
It's just, this is advertising public relations, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I made my point. I only raised the point because the future of the lakefront, the master plan, and all the activity that could be occurring, soon.
I hear you're supporting this. If you'd like to make a motion in that support, we can make it one way or official, one way or another. I don't know how to address that any further than that, other than to have another get-together with the staff, so.
Well, I wasn't sure if it was board's business or harbor master's business as to whether or not
In the past, we've just renewed it because we were a member, but since there's board level interest, if you guys want to pick a side, feel free.
Well, I've never seen any results of them doing anything with us or for us. And I don't see why we should pay that kind of money for getting nothing. That's just my opinion.
Can always.
Well, my main concern is someone has to go to the meeting in order for us to justify being a member. Is it going to be you? Is it going to be you? Who's it going to be?
Well,
then do you have the time for that?
We haven't done it in the past. I don't know I kind of agree with Bruce. I'm not sure what we would gain out of it. I think mainly we get listed in their book. Just historically, I think we get more out of participating with the Tourism Bureau down here than the Chamber.
Yeah.
So if I had to pick one, I think I'd pick the Tourism Bureau over the Chamber.
Well, if we're not going to renew, I'd like to see a motion not to renew.
I don't think we need a motion not to renew. We just don't renew.
Well, we're split. We're pretty much split as I count, so.
I just made a point.
Okay.
I wasn't saying yay or nay.
My point was neither either. It was is this
I understand.
The board's decision, or is it
whatever your pleasure is?
My
it sounds like a
suggestion
lot
is
of nays.
Well, if it's under her, it's her decision to make, because she has a budget to spend for advertising and public relations.
Yeah.
So I say that it's her decision to make. That's the way I feel about it.
I feel the same way.
So be it. Let you contact these two tomorrow, and you guys make a decision, and just let it be known.
All right.
Let's move on. Any questions with that? Thank you, John. Good point. And Bruce, attorney's report.
I have nothing to report.
No, right.
Okay. Sounds good. Anybody have anything from Mr. Sacknoon? Hearing none. Any new business come before the board? Old business come before the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I'd like to just make sure the board understands that when we lost Bob DeBeja last week,
yes,
we lost an unbelievable supporter and friend of the Port Authority. And Bob was here and helped really spearhead the new marina master plan. He put together the financial package and proposal that made us available and capable of selling bonds for almost $9 million. And the financial program that he put together was convincing enough to the bondholders that we could pay it off. And we paid that off under Bob's plan at the rate of almost $1,000 a day over all those years. But the whole point is that Bob's plan is still working for us. We're still following the same financial program that he put together for us in the earlier mid-90s. But the whole point is that Bob was a tremendous aid to us becoming what we are here at the Washington Park Marina. And I just know that the board appreciates that. And I wanted to call it to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd seen that notice in the paper, and I was going to try to remember to bring it up, and I totally forgot. I thank you for bringing it up. I've heard the stories. It was before my time, but I've heard the stories of all his involvement. It was really something. Thanks for bringing that up, Sam. Any other old or new business? No guest recognition. They're all gone. Look for a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting is 2 weeks from today on the 16th.
I make a motion we adjourn.
I'll second it.
We're adjourned. Thank you all.